we got to see the Texans starters this weekend, and we got a preseason victory. We're going to talk about all that and more on this edition of the Bullpen.
To throw the punches away. He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Touchdown for a Texan touchdown.
Hello and welcome to this Bullpen recap. We're recapping the Texans-Steelers matchup. As always, I'm James Roy, and with me is Tom Chavarria. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm good. It's a great time to be a fan of Houston sports, especially the Texans. I do believe through and through when the Texans are good, Houston is a football town, and we've got a very good football team to talk about today.
100%. And we've got some great football to talk about because for the first time this preseason, we got to see the starters. What were your thoughts, just diving right into it, what were your thoughts from the starters in this preseason matchup against the Steelers?
I thought it was very tame. I didn't think they tried to do too much. I still felt like, man, when this whole team is whole, and they still had holes in key positions, but when they are 100% all together, not nursing anybody through little injuries, they're going to be so fun to watch. And the first drive kind of just spoke to the ability that just the fraction, just a little taste that we got made you go, I want so much more. CJ, Tank, Steph Diggs. I mean, we haven't even seen Mixon, and I want that too.
100%. And he was returned Sunday night to practice, which was really nice to hear. I'm excited to see Mixon back. I think we can encapsulate, if we're looking at one play on each side of the ball and we're looking at what we saw from the starters in this preseason matchup, the Tank Dell touchdown catch, I think, is something we're going to see a lot this season. It's something that translates from the preseason to the regular season. That's something that Tank Dell and CJ Stroud have had outside of the preseason. So I'm not overreacting by saying that. That's just a good preview of what we should expect to see as Texans fans this season. And it's a reminder that this receiver room is deep. In a lot of people's eyes, Tank Dell is the wide receiver 3. And if that's what you're getting from your wide receiver 3, I don't know if there's a single secondary in the league that's ready to defend that receiving core. But looking at the defensive side of the ball, seeing Danielle Hunter get into the backfield and get a couple sacks was really nice to see. In his short time in the game, he really got after it. It probably wasn't what a lot of people wanted to see in terms of like getting back there. Or I guess I should say sack and pressure. But Danielle Hunter, when he did get the sack on Justin Fields, was kind of like touched him and he went down. It almost looked like he touched like a glass house and it just like shattered and fell in on itself. So not like the traditional like smash mouth football sack, but I think that those plays are signs of what's to come. And I'm glad with what we got from the Texans starters. Now, as has been the theme for most of the offseason, we're probably going to spend a lot of the rest of the episode talking about the depth because what else is there to talk about when your team is so good at the top that you like know what to expect from there? It's really refreshing this offseason, particularly to me, to be able to just talk about the depth and have those conversations about wide receiver 6 and like all the stuff that other teams are worried about finding a wide receiver 1. So truly blessed to be a Texans fan. But starting out, Xavier Hutchinson lit the world on fire in his week 1 matchup, or I guess I should say Hall of Fame game matchup with the Bears. We didn't see him near as much on the stat sheet, but I mean, if we're looking for big plays, it's the jet sweep. It seems like he has one every game that he gets into. He's really good at it. What did you get from his usage? Where do you think his standing has it shifted? What's his like place in terms of the Texans wide receiver room right now?
I feel like it's solidified. I really feel like while it may be one gadget play, it may be just one little piece of the playbook, I do feel like it's significant. We've seen it in both games. I believe we saw flashes of it last season as well. And it feels like just something that is geared for him that, it's just a part of their offense. It's a part of their scheme. So it's keeping the defense honest by showing them that so that you can run plays off of it. Maybe a sweep like mirrors it a little bit. Maybe you have play action where you have Hutchinson run that jet sweep to open up the other side of the field. And I just feel like when you see stuff like that, you can't help but wonder, well, if they're harping on it in the preseason like this, why would they all of a sudden ditch it in the regular season or then try to run it with someone else? So it makes me feel like X definitely has a place on this team. Real quick, I just got to say this because it just felt right. Tank and CJ, it felt like, I don't know about you, but that hookup felt like it was like 10 years in the making. It was so long since we got Tank Dell back on the football field after the awful injury. And it was just one of those satisfying sit back and like, yeah, that everything's right in the world for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. That's like seeing that touchdown catch too. Like to me, I was like, we're gonna get two drives max from these guys. I want to see something that like really just brings me back to 2023 before the injury with Tank Dell and go, yeah. I mean, I know it's a preseason game, but like I've seen that before, and I'm excited to see it again several times over the course of the next several years for this Texans team. But to speak to Xavier Hutchinson, I agree with you. And I think to take it a step further, when we've had these conversations about the depth with this Texans wide receiver room, I think it's understood that like the first 3 to 4 guys are going to get most of the work. And if you're past that part of the depth chart, you have to stand out in a certain way. I think it's almost better for Xavier Hutchinson that he stands out in this very singular way right now, because it's the best way for him to get opportunities and contribute in his own way with where he's at on the depth chart. There's been a lot of conversations about the fact that Stephon Diggs' deal looks like a 1-year rental deal. So whoever is sitting there with young with potential at the back of the depth chart that shows potential in one way could ultimately get more opportunities once Diggs leaves if he doesn't decide to re-sign with the team. So it's huge that he's showing himself in that way. You can't really have a conversation about Xavier Hutchinson without bringing up John Mechie. 2 targets, 1 reception for 7 yards. What do you make of his appearance? And do you? I only ask this because it's a conversation I've seen being had. I don't know. I don't really know if I'm at that point yet. But do you think that there's reason to discuss John Mechie as a cut candidate, as someone whose roster spot is in jeopardy, or do you think that it's preseason? The Texans already know what they're doing with him.
It's really interesting because I felt like, and we talked to it on the last show, I really felt like this was an opportunity to showcase him. This was an opportunity to go force feed him the football, get him back into the groove of things, and just really establish him and the rapport with the quarterbacks. And for me, it just seems like they have not done that. They've been really true to, hey, I'm finding my open man. I don't care where he is. And if it's John Mechie, great. And if it's not, then so be it. In this game, Robert Woods saw a lot of target share. And for all the people that are like, Robert Woods, we need to cut him and we're going to save all this money and we can spend it on something else. Every time I see him catch the football, I think he's just going to be a Texan. I just really feel like they value him. They value his experience. They value his leadership. They value the fact that he stays healthy-ish, relatively speaking, and he's just going to be a member of this team. I don't know.
I mean, I feel you on that. I think that watching him, the where he got his work and how he did in the work that he got in this preseason game kind of confirms what has been an underlying thought for me, and I've tried to kind of convey it throughout the offseason, which is that while the cap space could be appealing with Robert Woods, obviously a lot of people will say, well, his only purpose on his roster is veteran presence. We watched him fill in for Dalton Schultz as the security blanket for CJ Stroud last season. We watched him make some important plays that while were small parts of what the Texans did last season, were important in the grander scheme of things. And so he's still got talent. I know he's an older guy. The question is the Texans have to answer, and it could very well be the answer that he is a Texan. But the question is his experience and his level of play worth occupying a roster spot that you could give to another guy like, say, a John Mechie or a Xavier Hutchinson, who has the potential to in the future grow into a role that could contribute for longer, because Robert Woods at best might give you another 2-3 years. Like if we're really being optimistic with Robert Woods and what he has left in the tank. And that is at the level of a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. So that's really a position I'd rather see a young guy, develop in, especially with the prospects of Stephon Diggs, staying on the roster past this season, not certain yet. So I think that he has shown exactly so far what he's needed to make me believe the Texans really like the prospect of keeping him on the team. Just while we're on the wide receiver conversation, Ben Skoranek, 2 targets, no receptions. That was another hot name during the Hall of Fame game with that 126-yard reception from Davis Mills. Just looking at the depth chart, Quintez Cephas is a guy who didn't really make a lot of noise in the first game. He has 3 catches for 18 yards on 3 targets. Overall, what sort of message did you get from the wide receiver usage and who performed in this game? And what is your final depth chart looking like right now based off of that?
It's so tough because I feel like there's still one more game to really hash that out. I mean, obviously they have 2 games, but I feel like who you see come in right after the starters in this next game for me is going to say a lot about what they think as far as, okay, the first guy I want to see is X or the first guy I want to see is Y, because you're probably going to still have Davis Mills backing up. So probably still going to try to run some good offense, try to make plays. And these are your guys. The guys that I see out there with Tim Boyle, who I feel is a camp body, are the guys that are probably not going to have a roster spot, or there'll be a practice squad or something like that. It's just going to be really tough because all of them have flash potential. I saw in different social media circles today where people were talking about trading John Mechie because that could be an option. Here's a guy still really young, rookie deal, potential, but hasn't seen it. So maybe it changes scenery. A team starved for wide receiver help could go and acquire John Mechie on the cheap. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if I'm the Texans. I want to do that for all the reasons that you outlined, with Robert Woods being a 1-year guy, with Stephon Diggs being a 1-year guy. That's depth you definitely want to keep your hands on. But at the same time, you can only carry so many guys.
Well, and let's look at that. With you being the Dameon Pierce fan club president, this is a very relevant point to bring that up, because if we've talked at multiple points about selling potential to make a trade, but the difference in those situations is that Dameon Pierce has shown on the field that he's capable of being that guy. So if you're saying selling potential, you're saying, oh, the 2023 was just an off year. Dameon Pierce is still worth a 4th round pick. If you want to give us one, you can have him. Whereas, John Mechie, by no fault of his own, has just not had the on-field production at the NFL level to warrant trying to sell his potential in getting anything back in a trade. I think if John Mechie was to leave the roster this offseason, it would be as a cut candidate in my eyes. I mean, unless, like you said, if there's a truly wide receiver starved team that has yet to find a player in the preseason and they're looking at the list of potential cuts and they go, hey, we don't want to see Mechie hit like waiver wire, and we want him to be on our team. We'll give you like a 6th or 7th round pick to get him because we think he can still be the 2nd round pick that you guys drafted him to be. Then yeah, but that also feeds back in the conversation of Nick Caserio not really being one to admit that a draft pick he made was not it. We haven't really seen that a whole lot yet. I mean, he obviously has cut players that he drafted, but at that high of a pick, I haven't seen that happen yet. So all in all, I think wide receiver is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Let's look at running back real quick, since we're looking at who's received what. Cam Akers, hot name in the Hall of Fame game, kind of continued carrying some momentum into this game, and I think firmly has himself in the conversation as RB3. I don't even know if it's a conversation of if he's making the roster or not at this point. Like, if I'm the Texans, I'm hard pressed to justify cutting Cam Akers from this team. How do you feel about Cam Akers' situation after week 1 of the preseason?
I mean, I think Cam Akers looks phenomenal. He's showing that he's able to be a weapon in the passing game out of the backfield. He's showing very good vision and being able to cut onto what some people would say bad wheels, being able to run, through holes that, you speak to. Dameon Pierce is not able to. Granted, he's doing it against 3s and 4s. Damien's doing it against,
it's a different level of competition. I'm not going to really apples and oranges, as you would say.
And I would. And the one point I want to make about the comment you were comparing, Pierce to Mechie, I don't know if you can say that Dameon Pierce's production on a bad football team warrants more than John Mechie being on a national championship team against one of those defenses that's like NFL caliber. I mean, coming out of college before that dude blew his knee up, he was probably going to be a first-round pick, but the injury made him a second-round pick. And I thought it was great value for the Texans. The cancer thing came later, and I do believe that there is a scenario where that guy can get back to, scoring touchdowns, doing the crane pose, and making everybody remember the guy that was in Alabama that you could not stop.
I agree with you that John Mechie can get to that level. I think that placing precedence on performance at the collegiate level over performance against NFL defenses, the team was bad, but I mean, to put it into perspective, Dameon Pierce almost broke 1,000 yards before missing the last 3 or 4 games of the season while playing for a team that typically wasn't looking to run the ball late in games. They were not doing that because they were down so far that he wasn't like, it's not like saying Dak Prescott's a really great quarterback because he gets a lot of passing yards and then looking and going, wow, look at all these garbage time games where he's throwing for 200 yards against, defenses that are really not worried about him because the Cowboys are out of the game. That's a common argument. I have not personally done research to verify the viability of that, but that is my example, if you will, of comparing those two situations. So I 100% think that you can use Dameon Pierce's NFL production and that it's more justifiable for potential than college production.
So why do you curse Jalen Petrie for similar production in the same year?
Oh my gosh! Now we're gonna put me. We're gonna talk about Jalen Petrie later. Okay, there's a lot to talk about here, but before we move into the defensive side of the ball, there was one or two more things I wanted to cover on this side of the ball. Tight end. Recently, I saw a ranking list. It wasn't an official one. It was I think Texans County had collaborated on a post with one of those Instagram pages that ranks top 3 or top 10 number 2 tight ends or whatever. And they had a top 3 tight end 2 or top 15 tight end 2s. And in the top 4 was Cade Stover as the Texans tight end 2. Do you think that nationally people think that the Texans drafted Stover as their tight end 2? Do you think that there's any reason to believe Brevin Jordan isn't the tight end 2? What are your thoughts on the tight end position in general? With the scope, or should I say with the context that Cade Stover has just been getting targeted I don't know, there's not a PC way to say how he's been getting targeted. He's getting thrown out a lot. He's doing really well with that target share. What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
I think the national media is totally oblivious to anything in Houston. I need to go no further than the right tackle situation where they 100%. Were 100%. They have no right tackle. I do believe that the national media and maybe some people in this post do believe that Cade Stover's tight end 2. I do not. I think it's entirely disrespectful to Brevin Jordan. Brevin Jordan has done
76 yards. That's all I got to say. 76 yards.
Brevin Jordan has done nothing to warrant this. He hasn't played one snap. And that'd be like saying, well, Laramie Tunsil's not a good left tackle because he hadn't played in the preseason. Come on. Just because they drafted a guy and he's out there. I love Cade Stover. I think his potential is phenomenal. I just can't go and all of a sudden crown him. But I'm that way with Kamari Lassiter too. I'm reserved with all the rookies. Look,
and I agree with you on one of those things.
Put it on tape against the ones, and then we roll with it. Right now, I mean, we'll get to the defense, but Kamari's still not playing. I'm starting to worry about that a lot. That's not good. That's not good. If you tell me we go through the entire preseason and I don't see a 1 in any position group, offense, defense, whatever, I'm nervous because those games, whether you play 5 snaps or 10 snaps or 100 snaps, you need that game speed. It's not the same. There's nothing in practice that prepares you for the game speed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you that I would much rather see Kamari Lassiter with the ones at some point this preseason. I believe it was an injury that kept him out
ankle.
Of this most recent game. There's a lot of soft tissue injuries going around, so I prefer that those stop. I like soft contact. Shout out Mauricio Dubon, the king of soft contact, but soft tissue injuries not my favorite thing. So let's just get rid of those right now.
It's the NFL's version of discomfort in the MLB.
I know, right? I'm just like, okay, dude, we get it. You don't want to like let everyone know what Christian Harris is capable of. Just tell us you're not playing him. Stop concerning us with soft tissue injuries. But let's get into the defense. Let's talk about it. And I want to open with Jalen Petrie because I felt like, we haven't really gotten a chance to look at Jalen Petrie as the star safety, this, box safety, whatever you want to call it, nickel cornerback. He's playing more in the box and he's getting after it. So, Tom, I want just in general, what were your thoughts on Jalen Petrie's performance in this game?
I don't think he played poorly. I don't think he separated himself as anything other than a good defensive player. I think Jalen Petrie is, and I don't know if it's fair or not, but I think the bar is set a little high for him. Great compared to where he was drafted, compared to where he is in his career. I feel like the bar is like, dude, you better be a stud. And I don't know if he has to be that. I don't know if he can just be good. He doesn't have to be stingly good. I mean, not all these guys hit. And it's not like he was the third pick in the draft. But I feel like the minute you hear anything about Jalen Petrie, it's like, he's not good enough. And I'm just like, he needs to be better. I'll agree to that. Year 3, this needs to be whatever role they have him in, it needs to be better. The depth chart still has him as safety, and I don't know what to tell anybody other than he's probably going to play safety. As much as I like what I've seen from Kalen Bullock, I don't know if he's ready to take on that role. And I think trying to force that may set him up for failure. I think that's where Petrie needs to be. But in situations that you're going to get maybe a heavy run team, or you're gonna force a rookie quarterback to beat, Stingley and Kamari Lassiter, because that's our CB2, and you're gonna put him on an island 1-on-1. Absolutely, put him down in the box. Let him go. Let him eat. I love the sound of that. But do I think he's gonna have to be able to move between roles? Absolutely. And I think people are gonna have to be okay with him not making every play.
I agree with you. I think that seeing him play safety less is just my thing. I think that, and it's for the sake of his development. I agree with you that I think that he was kind of thrust into this role of being the guy with no safety blanket, and he did a really good job year 1. Took a step back, and now I think playing to his strengths, putting him in the box more, while not taking him out of the role of safety completely is the correct path. And I think that it showed. I think that in the small sample size we got, I mean, we obviously, we can't draw conclusions from, 2 drives of preseason football. That would be unreasonable. And no one does that ever. Right, Tom?
Ever.
No, but I like what I saw from him. I guess all the other questions across defense center around injuries and what to expect. We'll talk about the linebacker room. The biggest concern is depth. I think that Neville Hewitt showing as the best piece of depth is not my favorite thing. So obviously this game was a little bit better to see the depth show out in a different way. But my main question centers around this. Christian Harris has, not practiced much of the offseason or much of the training camp period, much of the preseason in general, comes back to practice Sunday, leaves walking gingerly immediately. What is your level of concern with the linebacker position right now, just with what we've seen, or I guess haven't seen from Christian Harris?
My level of concern with the linebacker core is extremely high. I have been saying this since day 1, and I felt pretty good about it up until recently, that D'Amico would figure out his linebackers. He would just figure out a group, coach them up. He's a linebacker. That should be a strength. It should never be a weakness. He should be able to groom guys to be serviceable. Right now, season started today. That's probably my biggest area of concern, whether it be in the run or the pass. That soft spot in the middle where teams like to eat with elite tight ends, or you need to get those guys to come up and make tackles to really plug up the run. Right now, I don't see that from a lot of the linebackers that they run out there so far. And we've kind of been like, okay, patience. We haven't seen all the ones. And now I'm starting to fear that if anybody gets hurt, the guys that are out there right now are guys you're going to be asked to do these things. And I don't know that they're going to be good at it.
I'll tell you this. The importance of the pass rush being that great is becoming more and more apparent. I think that maybe the Texans front office and the Texans coaching does legitimately believe the pass rush is going to be so good this year that they're like, yeah, I mean, as long as you have a linebacker that can be there and just stand down the field and occasionally be in the way, we should be good. And maybe I hope, I'd hope he can stop the run. That's really all we need from our linebackers, because I don't know if it ends up being like Azeez Al-Shaair with Henry To'oTo'o on the field to start the season. I'm not going to be quite as confident as I'd be if it was Christian Harris. And I agree with you that the depth doesn't give me a lot of confidence if there's an injury. So I'm looking to see if someone stands out, maybe like one of the rookie that they drafted, Jamal Hill. We talked about Jacob Phillips, I might be mixing up these names. I feel like I'm mixing them up, but there's so many Dell Phillips. There's so many Phillips. There's Neville Hewitt, Jake Hansen. It's a matter of, are they just going to have special teams players as the depth for the linebacker room and hope for the best if they need to play? Or are the Texans going to have the necessary depth to perform in the linebacker space? But looking at other areas, you kind of hinted at it earlier, we haven't seen Kamari Lassiter. It all centers around injuries, this soft tissue stuff. What did you think of the corners sans Kamari Lassiter?
Well, in the beginning of the game, when the pass rush was absolutely in the backfield 80% of the time, I felt like the corners really weren't challenged. And if that's the kind of defense we're going to see, I really love the depth. I really love everything about the edge rushing group that we have with Jerry Hughes backing up some of these guys. He looks great in a flex role. I love the defensive tackles, what they've been able to do. Foley Fatakasi, I think that's how you say his last name. I'm
pretty sure that's it.
He looked really good. Mario Edwards looked really good. So the interior of the defensive line is playing really well in spots. And for me, I think if they're going to get good push and then good at edge rush, the secondary is going to be allowed to make some mistakes because they're just not going to have the time to find some of these guys. So that you lean on that a little bit. You hope it's not a constant problem. And then you hope that some of these younger guys that we're talking about that maybe have a play here or there develop into something else.
100%. A little off topic here, but you brought up Mario Edwards. It's my understanding that the players on the team call him Rio. And being the white person that I am and knowing more about Duran Duran than I should, I just really hope that the in-house entertainment MCs have the wherewithal, the DJ, to play the song Rio by Duran Duran when Rio gets a sack.
There's no way they play that.
There's
song.
Like zero chance it happens, but I don't know, man. I'd love to see it. I'd love to. That's the kind of stuff I would do if I was in charge of that stuff, and that's also the reason why I'm not in charge of that stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
You bring up the defensive line, and I agree with your points on the secondary. I think that if the pass rush is what I think the defense is going to live or die by the pass rush is what it's looking like. That and Derek Stingley just being a massive cloud covering anywhere the ball could go if the pass rush doesn't get there. And hopefully Kamari Lassiter's game film showing him to be who we think he is, or I guess who we other Texans fans that are not you. No, I'm just kidding. I know you're just hesitant to put a rookie out there. That's cool. I understand that.
I just need to see it. I'm not dogging Kamari Lassiter at all.
You just need to see it, and that makes sense.
It's easy to see the practice tape. It's easy to see the college film and go, oh, that's a stud. That's a dog. And his mannerisms, his body language scream CB1 type energy. It's just until you get out there with the lights on, you don't know if that's that guy or not. Jeff Okudah was built the same way. Everything, number 3 pick in the draft, everything screamed this dude was the guy. This is his 3rd team in 3 years, I think.
So yeah, I mean, I agree with you to that point that we're probably going to live or die by the pass rush. And that being said, the Texans initially during the undrafted free agency swarm period took Phildarius Payne, signed him. There was some confusion, in my opinion, where he was listed as an interior defensive lineman, listed as a defensive end. When Texans County broke the news today, which is that he was cut a while back. Now he's back on the team. I'm wondering what motivated this re-signing. And my question to you is what his chances are of making the roster. But he's listed as a defensive end per Texans County. So what do you think of Phildarius Payne?
I think if he was a fan favorite, that bodes well for the fan base. Obviously, they saw something they liked. I think that if he has flexibility to play inside and outside, that would make a lot of sense considering that they just lost – I'm struggling with the name for 6 games. He's suspended.
Danico Autry.
Yeah, trying to replace Danico Autry, that could be a solution there. For me, when those guys go out and get somebody, I always feel like he's going to be something because I have extreme faith in Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans to go scout talent.
Sweet. Yeah, no, I agree with you entirely. I don't know. Just looking at the depth chart, my big thing is he's listed as a defensive end. When I'm looking at the defensive end depth chart, if we're looking at it without Danico Autry, like I was already looking at that depth chart without him because his expected usage was a lot of interior work, specifically third down. But when we look at that, we've got, Daniil Hunter, Will Anderson Jr., and then you could go any combination of Derek Barnett, Jerry Hughes, and you go down the list of draft picks between Solomon Byrd and who's the TCU had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Oh man, I am just spacing hard. I was going to gloss over it, but I need everyone to know that I didn't know it. So anyway, it's just there's already questions about who's making the roster at that position. There's some people projecting the Texans to cut their 7th round pick that they drafted at the position. So an undrafted player would truly have to be exceptional to garner a spot. I think maybe the Texans view him as a potential practice squad player, so they wanted to get him in the building while they're doing roster cuts to make sure he's familiar, so he can be. They probably liked him before he got cut, but just needed to cut him for some reason. And so I think it makes sense to bring him back in that context, but I'm not fully sure what his place would be on the roster otherwise. With that in mind, let's talk about special teams briefly. It's our second week seeing the new kickoff. What are your thoughts watching it? I feel like preseason is the perfect place to test it out. Did you get anything out of it? Do you like it right now? If you were asked and you had to say, would you say you like the new format better, or would you say that you don't?
To be honest, I don't necessarily know. And only because I've seen it and it hasn't really changed much. I need it to play out more, if that makes sense. Like I need to see the field advantage from like kicking into the end zone. I need to see, it play out in the fourth quarter of a game. Right now, I feel like, they kick the ball off. They're really trying to hit that target zone, so you get a lot of returns. But I haven't seen anybody break anything. So, and this is watching other games other than the Texans. So for me, it's kind of meh because you're still getting the ball out to about the 25, 30-yard line maybe, and then you just line them up and go. So it really kind of feels like while this change could be beneficial, I think it definitely might help with injuries. I just don't see how you can get as beat up now not having a head of steam. I don't see it changing the field position a ton so far.
Yeah, I feel like I agree with you that it probably has to play out over more time. If you ask me right now, I like it because it increases the amount of returns. I think situationally speaking, and this is like, deep future, right? End of the season, Texans make the playoffs, and they're like, one stop away from getting past the divisional round for the first time ever. And Fairbairn steps up, and it's really windy in Kansas City, and he does his best. He's a professional. All season, he's never missed the target zone. and then this one kick sails out of the back of the end zone. It's my understanding that ball would be placed at, is it the 30 or the 40?
I think it's the 40.
Sure it's the 40.
Yeah.
So now we've placed the other team in a position where, I mean, obviously the wind is against them in this situation, so they do have more work to do, but they could move the ball legitimately 30 yards and be in range to hit like a nice 50-yard field goal and take the game. So like, am I super stoked about the heightened consequences of that? No, but they are necessary to get the result the NFL is going for. So I don't hate it. But yeah, with that in mind, Tom, do you have anything else you'd like to talk about with this game before we put it behind us forever and continue looking forward to regular season football?
So only because I know people would be upset, and I genuinely don't mind upsetting people. Did you happen to see where a certain defensive end that used to play for the Houston Texans was the last couple days?
I'm guessing. I'm pretty sure you're referring. If we're referring to the same person, I'm pretty sure he was in Houston, training, getting ready for the season.
I didn't see him training.
Sorry, the permanent off season that he's on. I don't know.
I didn't see him training. I just thought it was very interesting that a certain guy who used to wear number 99 was in Houston getting a haircut with his kid, hanging out in Houston when he lives in Arizona to watch a Burnley game. And I found it interesting. I was just wondering if you were
with the time zone, maybe it's just a better spot to watch the game.
I mean, he flew into Houston though. Maybe that barber is just the best barber, or the sushi he had was the best sushi, and he needed to get his fix. To me, it was just interesting that he was in Houston. I just don't expect him to be in Houston when he's from Wisconsin, got a home in Arizona, got a soccer team in the UK. Why is he in Houston?
This has been Watt Watch with Tom Chavarria, a weekly segment where we watch where JJ Watt has been. And this week he was in Houston. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe D'Amico's making the call. Maybe he's got that lifeline.
I'm just looking forward to the meme, or not the meme, the Insta post, the tweet that it's from him saying, source me with the new Texan swag or something like that. I mean, it's gonna feed families, as they say.
It will. JJ Watt could legitimately come back for 3 games and get half a sack, and I would be ecstatic. So mainly because I feel like we have a second to talk about this, but we'll probably end the episode right after this. But for me, I don't know if y'all remember, but when JJ Watt retired, I was in the camp of, okay, cool, he's going to sign a 1-day contract with the Texans and retire a Texan. And then I watched the announcement or the interview he did where he basically said, yeah, that doesn't really matter. It's just a meaningless piece of paper. And for me, it was more than that. It wasn't a meaningless piece of paper. So JJ Watt could literally sign a contract to sit on the sideline and not play it down. And I would be ecstatic because it would mean JJ Watt would retire as a Texan, like officially per the legal papers that don't matter to him, but matter a whole lot to me. So that's just me. That's just me. That was a big day for me when Andre Johnson signed the 1-day contract to retire as a Texan. That was huge for me. I know it meant a lot to the city, at least a lot of the people in the city. So for me, that's still that's why I don't mind talking about the JJ Watt train, because to me it just revives this hope in me that he could sign that contract and retire a Texan in that way.
What if? Ponder the question, what if? JJ always knew that this would happen, and signing that would have been saying that I'm done, and he was not prepared to be done. Knew that D'Amico was on the way and waited in the wings to see him build the team to which he would lead and show up and try to win a ring. What if?
Tom, you're giving me hope. I don't know if I like it yet. We'll see. I'll let you know. But thanks for tuning into this episode of The Bullpen. I've been James Roy. As always, with me is Tom Chavarria. We switched networks. I think I said that on the podcast last week, but we're a fan-sided podcast now. So you're looking for Texans content and you're looking through the fan-sided multiverse. We're in Earth 616 putting out some fine Texans content. So thanks for tuning in and listening to it. If you are not listening to it and you're watching it, you can listen to it on Spotify and Apple Music. And if you're listening to it and you're not watching it, it is available on YouTube. I would search up at James Roy NFL, which brings me into where you can find us on social media. I'm James Roy, and you can find me at James Roy NFL on X, and you can find me at M1 Texans Fan on Instagram. Tom is at TC Tom1 on Instagram, and he is at Third Coast Tom on X, which is what he calls it. I mean, I only said it that way because Tom made me promise that I would call it X from now on, out of respect for Elon Musk's decision to change the name for that platform. I'm just kidding. Tom calls it Twitter just like us normal people do. And yeah, that's where you can find us. And now you have all the information you need to get top tier Texans content just in time for the 2024 season. And we'll see you in New Orleans at the end of the season. That's where we'll be. Well, we're not going to be there, but we'll be talking about it here in the space. Maybe we'll be there. Is someone going to sponsor us going there? We'll look into it. We'll see. If we'll be blessing if you were to sponsor us going there for sure. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.